And happy Kwanzaa to everybody. Habari gani.
Habari gani.
Kushishakalia.
Welcome, my Dallas folks. Glad to see you here. We are across the country today, aren't we? So put your name and your city in the chat so we can know who all is here. And I'm looking for this on Facebook. I haven't found it yet. I think it's going to be on Facebook Live shortly.
Yeah, I think it's on my Facebook. Let me check on my other computer.
Let's see who's here. Let's see what cities are represented. And I'm going to say Hustle, class of 2001 representing.
All right. I can't believe it's been that long. Yeah, that's 20 years.
I was like 5 years old when I finished law school.
You were 5 years. I was 7 years old.
Aisha Braveboy, what a legend. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I would miss Professor Taifa.
Oh, yeah, y'all stop calling me that now. That was back in the day.
We still call you Professor Taifa.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Okay, I'm checking.
Invite your friends. It's just going to be a casual chat, nothing formal. We'd love for younger people to be here, some young adults to learn from this amazing living legend that we have here. And yet, you can be a living legend and not reach a certain age.
Okay, yes, it's on Facebook. It's on my Facebook page. See, I got it. It's there.
All right, I'm going to look for it then.
I see your face on Facebook. It's there. Just trust me. I'll share it to your page right now, okay?
Okay, great. And then I can share it.
Share on a friend's profile. Is that what it is? Yeah, on your profile. DMAC. There you go. And talk. Demetria and Nkechi. And post. Okay, it should be there on your page. Let's go on and get this party started. Oh no, it says we're having trouble completing your request. Try again, Lord Jesus. Okay, well, Facebook's having problems.
You recorded it, so we can always see it later.
Yeah.
We can always see it later.
Okay, I don't know why. Maybe I got two computers up. All right.
So again, Habari Gani to everybody. Let's listen and learn about and plan on getting bolder with self-determination ideas and principles. Today's the second day of Kwanzaa. Yesterday, we recognized the principle of umoja, unity. And I'm so glad that today we're extending the practice of unity by bringing together Dallas, Washington, D.C., let's see, Prince George's County, Maryland, folks from all over. And so I just want to say how proud I am of my former professor, and I'll say / my sister in the struggle friend, attorney Nkechi Taifa, on the publication of her new book, Black Power, Black Lawyer. And let's get this chat going. So some of you folks might not know her, particularly folks here in Dallas. So I'm just gonna highlight, listen, we would spend the whole hour if I highlighted all the things she's done. But I'm just going to go through and highlight some of the things she's done so you can get a little flavor of what her walk has been. So she graduated magna cum laude from Howard University. Some of us graduated cum laude, but she's graduated magna cum laude from Howard University. She holds a JD from George Washington University Law School.
Now that was thank you, Lordy.
Amen. She's currently the president and CEO of the Taifa Group, LLC, which is a social enterprise firm whose mission is to advance justice. She convenes the Justice Roundtable. That's been around for a while, even when I was in DC. And that's a broad network of advocacy groups who are advancing kind of progressive justice system reform. She serves as senior fellow at the Center for Justice at Columbia University. She was appointed to the governing board of the Corrections Information Council, which is an independent monitoring body that provides oversight over the conditions of DC residents who are imprisoned throughout the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the DC Department of Corrections. She served as the Advocacy Director for Criminal Justice for the Open Society Foundation and the Open Society Policy Center from 2002 to 2018. She is the founding director of the award-winning, and this is how I met her, so this is important to me, founding director of the award-winning Equal Justice Program at Howard University School of Law. She did that between 1996 to 2002, where she also directed the law school's externship program and taught seminars on racial disparity in the criminal justice system, public interest law, and the law of corrections and prisoners' rights. And I took that class, racial justice, and I have to say I did well. Didn't do as well as I wanted to, but I did come out of there with an A.
You know you did.
But I didn't do as well as I wanted. I didn't.
Oh, you were perfect, my sister, as always.
She also served as legislative counsel for the ACLU from 91 to 96. And again, like I said, the list goes on. But guess what? This is not her first published book, okay? She has been writing. She co-authored a book that you guys might want to check out too, called Reparations Yes, back in 1987, along with Dr. Mario Bedelli and attorney Chakwe Lumumba. And she also authored children's books, Shining Legacy, story poems and tales for the young, So Black Heroes Forever Will Be Sung. That was in 83. And then Three Tales of Wisdom in 83. And in 1992, she authored The Adventures of Kojo and Amma. And even Pan-African Connection, our Black bookstore here in Dallas, has had that on their shelves. And so in the chat, you'll see where you can get this current book. Our current book, which is Black Power, Black Lawyer. So you can get this from her website. There's a link there where you can go and order this online, especially since we're in COVID times. We don't want to go places in person, but also you can buy it from Black booksellers as well. So remember that. So let me get started right now. Let me get started with some questions here. Again, if you're just joining us, put your name and the city that you're in the chat for us. That'd be great. So
before you do, Demetria, let me just thank you so very much for hosting this. I always have a very soft spot in my heart for folk who are part of my course, Racial Disparity in the Criminal Justice System at Howard University. And then to see all the great things that you all are doing now, 10, 20, 25, years later. All of that, right. Well, we were only 2 when we started. But Demetria, all of the phenomenal groundbreaking work that you've done in the area of housing has just been absolutely, phenomenal. And we have State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, who was also one of the students in the class there during that time. And I know other people as well. So I just wanted to just give that little shout out right there just before you begin.
Thank you.
Oh my God, see NAREISSA Smith in there. Oh my God.
NAREISSA was my classmate. Whoop, whoop.
For my heart.
Let's delve on in here though. So let me ask you this. So when I read this book, which actually I'll tell you folks, it's a page turner. You don't want to put it down. It was really, to me, a history lesson, lots of history lessons. And so you've chosen to write this as a memoir when it really could just be egots of chapters of history. So can you share with us why you decided to write this as a memoir?
Yes, well, I wanted to write it as a memoir because my life is full of history, okay? I majored in history in college, but I didn't want just a dull, dry history text, okay? I wanted colored with texture and mosaic and all of that is part of my life. But I also wanted to tell a little bit more of the personal side, the human story as well, of what motivates people to do the things that they do, and from a firsthand front row seat, I guess you could say, to history. So no, I didn't want it to be just a history book. I wanted it to be a life story. Basically, I find things like that more interesting. I have colleagues who are in the participant audience from Panama there, Damani and Ife King. They wrote a book. You would think it might be a history book, which it is, but they wrote it as part of a historical fiction, a book called Clandestine. People should really take it's a story from their personal family history, their great grandmother was given away as a wedding present. I mean, but it was couched in real live events. So mine, no fiction is there, it's all fact, but it's fact based on my personal experiences with historical stuff woven in and out as I saw them from my vantage point.
Oh, shame. And so let's talk about that vantage point. You started off very young, working in community, working in DC where you grew up. I mean, I got my kiddos here, I say my young adults on the line here. They're 18 and 20. And in the book, you talk about some community organizing activities you were doing even as early at the age of 17. So can you talk about how and why you got involved so early and how you were called into this work? It's such
But actually, I really was before I was 17. Actually, in my high school, we did volunteer work at the Crippled Children's Ward at a DC General Hospital and all like that. But actually, I used to sell Black Panther Party papers on the streets of Washington D.C. when I was 16 years old. Around the time, maybe 16, maybe 17, there is one of my earliest, probably the first female mentor that I had who's on the participant line. Her name is Anuli Street, and she was part of the co-founder for an organization called Black Land Movement. And she hired me as her official babysitter for her children, and I also as a clerk to file a lot of the papers. And she had all of the papers from the movement. There was the Black Panther paper, whether it was Third World News and Magazine, Black Scholar, Muhammad Speaks, Finally Got the News, you name it. All of the newspapers that were there and magazines of the day. So I drank up all of that information and knowledge just as part of I wasn't just as part of proximity, I guess you could say, to people who were moving and shaking, during that time. So I'm a teenager at this time. I'm a teenager and I walk into a black bookstore called Drum and Spear Bookstore in DC at that time at 14th and Fairmont Street. And I'm looking through an African names book, and I said, I want to have an African name. So I looked in there and I saw this name. It looked like it said Nkechi to me. Okay, that's what it looked like, Nkechi. And so that's what I started calling myself. It wasn't until much later, Demetria, when I went to college, that I found out that the N, like an Nkrumah, who I had never heard of at that time, had the N sound and not the Na sound, and the E had the A sound. It's supposed to. So anyway, it should have been Nkechi. Okay, but I mean, what do I know at 16 years old? What can I say? So yes, I was kind of involved with social justice, and I'm right smack into the Black Power era. That's what was going on at that time. That was a time when you could stand at the bus stop. Weren't no metros in that day, and you see a brother or sister standing at the bus stop with a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X under their arm, or Haki Madhubuti, his name was Donnell Lee back then, Don't Cry, Scream, book of poetry. And there was just consciousness oozing everywhere. The war in Vietnam was, in high stride, and people were the music of the day. Everything was talking about revolution and consciousness and by any means necessary. And I was smack in the middle of it.
You were in the middle of it. Wow. And then you went to the Mecca, the Black Mecca, HU, right? Yeah. Now you just name dropped. It's not you name dropping, but I caught on to the Haki Madhubuti. And so let me just ask you about, and this is where I think my special connection to you as a professor clicked in, because I was a theater major in undergrad as well as graduate school before I went to law school. And you've always incorporated the arts into everything you did, into all of your social justice work. And so I know in the book, you had some experiences with some pretty heavy hitters, like Killins, John Oliver Killins, one of the greats in the world of the arts. And you had some poetry and conferences that you attended with some major luminaries in the arts. And so can you talk a little bit about how the arts influence kind of your work and your road and journey in this world called justice?
Yeah, well, I really love the arts. Kind of jealous of you, Demetria, because I think, didn't you major in theater or something like that? Yeah, I really say, I probably should have done that because I like to act. I mean, I like to get out there. But I went to Howard University, yes, the Mecca. Okay. I'm native Washingtonian. I mean, I know Howard folk don't want to hear this, but folk in DC, there always was this thing about the DC community and then Howard University, and Howard was kind of like highfalutin, and we in DC
Bougie.
thought it was bougie, and well, it was kind of bougie and all like that. But I needed to go to Howard because I went to all white girls Catholic high school that my parents made me attend. We weren't even Catholic, but my parents were in part of the DC public school system, which was kind of deteriorating at that time, and they wanted me to get a quote unquote good education. And I don't know why I can't get a good education with black folks, which is why I wanted to go to Howard. So yes, I can get a good education with black folks. So I get to Howard, and I'm thinking, dang, the revolution done already happened, because the takeover of the A building happened in '68. I didn't get to Howard until '73. Okay, I said, yeah. But there were some bright spots there. Again, there are people, there are not that many people on this Zoom, but there are some luminaries on here. Damani Keene, William Keene at that time was the dean of residence life at Howard University. We're talking about the undergraduate campus. We're talking about a brother with this huge afro. See, these were the days, you know what I mean? And, it always.
My brother's on the call and he had a huge afro, but that's just a footnote.
Let me say that again.
My brother's on the call right now and he had a huge afro. But
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And so at Howard, there was this, and in the community, there was this institution called the DC Black Repertory Theater. And then there was Ira Aldridge Theater at Howard and Crampton University. And there were always plays going on and just things that I just loved. And there were these art conferences, these the name, it's in my book, the name just escapes me, but it was a series of conferences. There were arts where all of the luminaries from, Sonia Sanchez and Lucille Clifton, and I mean, the names just, they're in my book. My name, I should have opened that part right there. John Oliver Killens, Haki Madabuti, Mari Evans. I mean, the list just goes, goes on and on. And, I drank it all up. Nikki Giovanni, I drank it all up. And it was just so refreshing, shall I say. Haki Madabuti actually was teaching at Howard at the time, and I took his course. And John Oliver Killens was kind of doing some teaching at that time. I was part of the John Oliver Killens Literary Guild. Sterling Brown had recently retired from Howard University, and I was just blessed to be part of that mix.
Yeah.
I was a history major. I was in Douglas Hall all of the time, and just drank up a lot of knowledge, but spent a lot of time in the community as well as part of organizations.
Yeah. So let's turn our attention to reparations. Hear all this talk nowadays, especially during the primaries, about reparations, and people starting to learn how to pronounce it. Let's just put it that way. But you have been there from the ground floor. So can you educate us and folks? I mean, when I tell you, you learn so much from reading this book, you learn a lot from reading this book. It's not just a memoir, it is a history book. Can you tell us about Belinda Royal? I don't know who on this call is familiar with Belinda Royal, but if you ever want to utter the word reparations, you need to know this piece of history.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Belinda Royal's case was really the first recorded case for reparations, successful, quote unquote, in this country. We're talking about quite a while ago, during the 1700s. She actually petitioned the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the proceeds from the estate of her former enslaver, an estate that she had a whole lot to do with helping to build. And she went to court, for that. And she actually was awarded a redress in the form of a number of shillings. I forgot how much. It's just a pittance, but it was like the first recorded case. And, then we had, Callie Houts and Isaiah Dickerson during the late 1800s with the organization they started, the National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association, which at one time just had over 600,000 dues paying members. This was during the time after enslavement. People were looking for their family members. They were trying to find folk who had been sold away. I don't know if folks saw, I don't know if I should even use this as an example, but The Handmaid's Tale, if anyone ever saw that, and when folk had escaped to Canada or something like that, and you see all these bulletin boards saying, have you seen my sister? Have you seen my brother? Well, this is what it was like right after the enslavement time. People looking for family members, and all of the promises, the broken promises that were made, but that quest for reparations, for reparatory justice, for redress, extended down through the centuries. We're in today, in the 21st century, we are still making that demand. We're still making that claim.
And so then if we leap a little forward, you were part of the whole beginning of the National Coalition, right?
The National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Yeah. Well, that's much later, though actually, technically, it was a long time ago. We're talking about over 30 years ago. But when I say much later, back when I was selling Black Panther papers on the streets of Washington, D.C., at 16, I would look in the newspaper, and point number 3 talked about reparations, talked about payback for slavery, 40 acres and a mule. In fact, all of the papers in those days, all of those papers from Blackland News magazine that I was going through and drinking, they all talked about reparations, but it all was from the fringes, from the Black Power, I guess you could say, from folk who mainstream society would characterize as crazy or fringe, et cetera, et cetera. So jump 30 years later to around 1987, a conscious effort was made to seek to more mainstream the reparations movement, which had always been a movement. We talked about from Belinda Boyle back then in the 1700s all the way up. It had always been a movement, but it never really reached the the mainstream. So in 87, an organization that was formed, called for by Brother Mario Obedelli, who actually taught at Texas Prairie AME after he got out of prison as a political prisoner, who I helped to lead a defense committee, the National Committee for the RNA. That's another.
He taught in Texas at Prairie A&M?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he got his PhD after he got out of prison and all like that. And so I co-wrote the book, Reparations, yes, in 87 with the Mario Obedelli and Brother Chokwe Lumumba, who later on became the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. His son now holds that title. And actually his sister, Rukia, I think she might have been after you. I'm not quite sure when she was, but came to Howard University School of Law as well, and was one of my students in my course, Racial Disparity in the Criminal Justice System. But I say all that to say a conscious effort was to seek to broaden the reparations movement. And when I say broaden, I'm talking about just broaden it among Black folk. The sororities and fraternities, the religious institutions, seek to take it from the fringe Black power to the broader Black community. And that was with the birth of the National Coalition for Blacks Reparations in America. And along that same time, Demetria, the Japanese American Redress Bill was being debated in Congress, which passed in 1987, made effective in 1988. And that bill gave $20,000 to each Japanese American detention camp survivor, a trust fund to be used to educate Americans to their sufferings, a formal apology from the US government, and a pardon for all those who resisted detention camp internment. And we're looking around and say, well, if they could do it for the Japanese Americans, right, my God, surely for over 400 years, they can do it for Black people. So we work very closely with John Conyers in crafting HR 40,
And just for people who don't know, Representative John Conyers in the U.S. Congress at the time. Go ahead.
Oh my God, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Yeah, Dean of Congressional Black Caucus during much of the time he was there. And so it was patterned off of the Japanese American Redress Bill, which called for a study to study the issue, and then for a recommendations to be made for passage. And so that's, but the bill lay dormant really for 31 years until just last year. Okay, on Juneteenth there was a historic hearing held in the House Judiciary Committee. Ta-Nehisi Coates and other people testified, and then it, began to get traction. I want to also mention, my apologies, I saw also in the participant brother attorney, fellow attorney at law, Maynard Henry. Maynard Henry is the great nephew of Brother Imari Obadeli, and he is an attorney in Virginia and was instrumental in many of the legal cases. Most folks do not know the name when I say Imari Obadeli, but that's one of the reasons why people need to get the book, because it's living history in here, told from a firsthand, first seat perspective and point of view. It talks about people who were basically either footnotes in history or swept under the rug, but part of history that we really, really should know about if we really, really want a comprehensive view of just what these movements were all about. So anyway.
And I don't want to, and to get the book, the link is in the chat, so you can add.
Demetria, I think you're frozen. At least you're frozen for me. I don't know if you're frozen for everyone else. Someone put in the chat if Demetria is talking or if she's frozen.
She's frozen, Sister Nkechi.
Okay, she's frozen. Okay, unfreeze. Okay, I don't know how you unfreeze somebody, or if they know that they're frozen. But while we're working to get Demetria frozen, I just want to welcome everybody who is here. Oh, why don't we do this? If you have any questions, put your, and someone said, Demetria, go out and come back in. Okay, I think she's going out and coming back in. Okay, great. Okay, techie. So if you have any questions, put your questions in the chat. And actually, we're not a huge crowd, because then we can maybe mute you and you can even ask your question. While we're waiting for Demetria to come back, does anyone have a question that they want to ask? If so, just go on and unmute yourself and ask it. You can do that.
Hello, Professor Taifa. This is NAREISSA Smith. How are you?
I am wonderful, NAREISSA. How are you, my heart?
Very good. It's so wonderful to see you. You look beautiful as always.
Oh, thank you. And congratulations for everything you've done in these past 20 years since you were my student, and your family that you've built and everything. What's your question, NAREISSA?
And I'm here with Miss Makeda, actually, and I was just wondering if you could explain a little bit about what led to your work on the disparity, the sentencing disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine.
All right, so I think I'm going to bring Demetria back, and I'm going to answer that question. How can we bring you back so you're next to me?
I just logged in on a separate device. For some reason, my computer froze.
Okay, so, I think you're back with me now.
I think you don't even have to worry about that. Like I was about to say before I got frozen, that I don't want to give everything away in the book, but I got to lift out this quote that you have in the book. And it really speaks to NAREISSA's question, really. Your quote says, and this is in chapter 4, organizations and movements do not materialize within a vacuum. They are shaped and molded by the triumphs and travails of real people. And so right now we've got the Black Lives Matter movement, and for many people, their movement is on the internet, right? And so we're not sure how long that's going to last, right? And so you've been in movements, particularly, I think we can glean and learn a lot from your work on the crack powder cocaine disparity movement that you helped build. So yeah, I appreciate NAREISSA's question. Good to see you, NAREISSA.
Okay, so I'll just chat just a bit about that. So now I'm a lawyer. I'm working in the policy realm. I'm working for the American Civil Liberties Union. And there is this testimony that's about to happen before the U.S. Sentencing Commission. And we're talking about 1991, something along those lines. And I'm wondering, what am I going to testify on? And one of my colleagues from the federal defender said, well, Nkechi, you ought to testify on this whole crack versus powder cocaine issue. And I really literally didn't know what she was talking about. And I'm thinking, why you want me to talk about that? What's that got to do with race? I didn't even know what she was talking about. And she said, well, take a look at this, Nkechi. You should take a look. So I took a look, and my eyes it was just, I'm up here, have been inundated by media sensationalism, which led people to believe that because it is Black people that you see jacked up against police cars, up against the wall, et cetera, for drugs, for crack, that it was Blacks that were the ones who were most involved in using that substance. I could not have been more wrong. The deeper I dug, the madder I got. I researched the National Institute for Drug Abuse, NIDA, which basically showed the statistics that said that there were more whites that used crack than Black. I said, what? That's not what I learned from, from the media. And then I learned about the disparity, the 100-to-1 disparity between crack and powder cocaine. Now, trust me, this was during a time when the only criminal justice issue groups like the NAACP was comfortable in talking about was racism in the application of the death penalty. So this was during a time before racial profiling became a term of art. I'm telling you, it might not seem that long ago, but we're talking about like early 90s, early 90s. Okay. And so I testified before the Sentencing Commission on the disparity. And there was a woman named Barbara Piggy from California, and her son was incarcerated under the crack laws, and she wanted a voice in Washington who could talk about these issues. And I just vowed that I'd do whatever I could do. And so we formed a coalition. And at that time, again, we were just trying to bring the Black groups on board. I mean, it wasn't even a thing of, and we were ultimately successful in it. We held the first conference on racial bias and cocaine laws that was streamed by C-SPAN, a young media entity at the time. And again, today we throw around terms that defund the police and white supremacy and all that. No one would have dared breathe anything like that in those days. That's why we had to call it racial bias, and we couldn't even say racism. That's why in my course at Howard University, I called it racial disparity in the criminal justice. I mean, I'm just saying, because folk didn't even want to be associated with using the word racism. We have come a long way. This was long before Michelle Alexander popularized what we have been saying all along about the system being like a system of Jim Crow. So that was in the early 90s. We lobbied Congressman Rangel, who at that time was like a war hawk, war on drugs war hawk at that time, to sponsor a bill in Congress to equalize the disparity. We coordinated with Black law enforcement groups who help and work and support us and all like that. And this was, Kimber Smith was still in prison at this time. This was during the time I'm walking the halls of Congress, 9 months pregnant, railing against what became the granddaddy of the crime bill of 1994, which featured the largest expansion of the federal death penalty in modern times, the gutting of habeas corpus, the evisceration of the exclusionary rule, the taking away of Pell educational grants for prisoners, the 3 strikes law, the refusal to address the crack powder disparity, and loads of money to states to build more and more prisons, to lock up more and more people. And that was the embryonic ascendancy of mass incarceration. We're just now getting out from under that. It wasn't until 2010 that the disparity between crack and powder cocaine was finally diminished from 101 to 1800 to 18 to 1. It wasn't fixed, just diminished. And it wasn't until 8 years after that 2018 when it was made retroactive. So that had been a long battle, transversing my work at the ACLU, my work at the Howard University School of Law, then my work at the Open Society. Over 3 different employers, I worked on, that issue almost nonstop. And we're still working on it. So anyway, that was a long answer for that question. So I apologize.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, none of these things happen quickly, and we have to remember that it takes some perseverance for us to move the rock even up the hill a little bit. I know I experienced that in the housing work that we do. So yeah, that's a good lesson. That's a good lesson. I am gonna open it up a little bit more, but I do have another question for you about a piece that I read in the book, which is amazing. I mean, I think as baby lawyers, when we first graduate, right, there's a little anxiety and making sure that we can handle some of the cases that we do. But I know in the book you talk about when you first went into private practice, you were thrown into being a representative of a major defendant, right? So every criminal defendant has their day and they're supposed to be able to be represented by counsel. And you were actually almost handpicked to represent a very, very, very well-known defendant. Can you tell us a little bit about that without giving away anything in the book? Because we want people to buy the book.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure she's not one here. Yeah. Because she did get 20 years
really,
in prison.
I mean, and tell us about how, I mean, like I said, as somebody doing something that you didn't necessarily have a lot of experience in as an attorney, what that walk was like.
Yeah. So the book talks a lot about, half of the book is my life before a lawyer and half of the book is my life as a lawyer. I mean, it's really weird, almost half and half. So the first whole half of my life, I'm part of all of these movements, the Black Power movement, the Black Studies movement, the movement to free political prisoners, the reparations movement, the Black Arts movement, the Black anything movement, and and I'm involved with issues involving political prisoners, and I'm involved with just a lot of cutting edge, very fringe, non-mainstream issues and people. So there was a I don't know I didn't want to give away the book, but a very important event labeled as criminal that occurred in Washington, D.C. And the lead defendant wanted a black, the defendants were white leftists from the era of the Weather Underground and John Brown Anti-Klan Committee and all like that. And she wanted a black attorney. And my reputation, I guess, kind of preceded me, even though I'm a new lawyer and we didn't have no internet in those days. They couldn't Google up Nkechi to even find out who she really is. So I'm up here trying to be a lawyer. Okay. And, I have this other whole part of my life that's still a part of me and it's still part of me today. But I'm trying to build up the other part of me. And so I'm kind of vacillating. Well, do I want to represent this defendant? Not just because of politics, because I'm a new lawyer. I know what the hell I'm doing anyway, But I decided, well, isn't this the reason, Nkechi, why you wanted to be a lawyer, to represent political prisoners and to, represent movements and things along those lines? So I said yes. And she was the lead defendant only because all of the other defendants were already in prison serving time for other convictions. She was the only one who was not serving any time. So I did say yes. We had a legal defense team. All the other lawyers were white. 2 of them ultimately ended up becoming judges in DC Superior Court, But back then we're talking about I don't know when we're talking about. Can't be late 90s, might have been late 80s. Yeah, I don't even, my brain, I'm getting the decades all mixed up now. But anyway, we talk about movement lawyering today. It's about client-centered advocacy, and the clients wanted a very specific type of trial, which we as lawyers gave as much advice as we can, but gave them the type of trial that they wanted. My client ultimately was convicted received a very hefty sentence, which she accepted because they ended up accepting a plea because the plea was advantageous from a movement point of view, I guess you could say. And they're all out of prison now. She's been out for years doing just great and wonderful things. But it's in the book, y'all.
In the book, y'all.
One of
It's
the
in the book.
cases. I also have the ketchup in my face case. I got the David versus Goliath ABC case. I mean, I got stuff, in there. But that one in particular, yeah, it's a memorable one.
Wow. Wow. You did that. You did that. All right, folks, if you can want to maybe you can unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one. Is that okay, Nkechi?
Absolutely, yes.
So you guys go right ahead. I've taken up all the questions time, so I'm gonna open it up to you. We got a shy group.
Question or
Well,
comment? Yeah.
well, I do have a question as someone who obviously graduated from the law school at Howard, but you went there for undergrad. What role would you say that Howard played in your development as a lawyer, as an advocate? Like, did you build upon relationships at Howard, or I just want to know what kind of role Howard played for you.
All right, State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy. Okay, so a lot of people think I went to Howard Law School. I went to Howard undergrad. I wanted to go to Howard Law School, but at the time when I went to law school, I was working full time during the day for an anti-apartheid organization, and I had to go to law school at night. And Howard did not have an evening program. I wanted to stay in DC, and I did what I always don't ever recommend any student to do. As many mentees, I only applied to one place. Oh God, Lord, who know how? I don't even know how I got in, but I applied to one place, GW, because it had an evening program, and I got in. So my experience mainly was from my Howard undergrad, because GW Law, that was just, there was one Black professor at GW Law when I was there, and he was on sabbatical the whole time I was there. So it was, I got out, thank you, Lordy, like I said. But Howard undergrad played a very influential and very essential role, even though I thought the revolution had already ended by the time I got there. Looking back on it in retrospect, there was just so much of, a culture. There was so many organizations there that I was a part of, or that were very close to me. There was so much stuff going on in the community, and I fused what was happening in the community, what was happening at at Howard. I will say my dream, and I do tell about my disappointment in the book, my dream was to be a tenure professor at Howard Law School. My dream did not become in actuality, but I treasured the years that I spent there. I loved the students, it's particularly the ones that are on this phone, that were like on this Zoom, Aisha Braveboy and NAREISSA and Demetria, and I'm not sure, there might be a couple more that's on this Zoom that was there with me as well. But you never know why certain decisions are made. And honestly, if I had stayed at Howard, if I had been offered a tenured position, I don't know, I might not have done all the other things I did.
Right.
I mean, I might not have been one of the chief architects of trying to dismantle mass incarceration. I mean, I don't know. You just don't know. I've even write in the book, when you unravel one part of your life, and then there's another part that unravels, and then another part, and you just don't know. My first job out of law school, I really, really wanted to be hired by the Public Defender Service of the District of Columbia. I was so hurt when I applied and didn't get that position. I was, but who knows? If I had gotten that position, I would not have been hired by the National Prison Project, by Al Bronstein. I would not have done all the things. There's so many things that sprung from the decisions that did become actualized versus the ones that I thought I wanted and I did want, but did not become actualized. So I say this to young people today: you might be disappointed and things that you might not have gotten. But you need to do as much as you can for the things that you do get. And you make a difference wherever you are. Okay. And you don't spend time, reveling in what you didn't get. Okay. You just make the most of what you did. And I think I've done that.
I think so. Let me ask you this. I mean, when I went to law school, I only went to law school to do public interest law. And probably that's one reason I stayed in your office so much. Because most of people don't realize that most of the people at Howard Law go into corporate world or they work for the government. But in reality, I was surprised to see that those of us who are public interest lawyers, the majority are whites. You know, people who aren't in that world would think that most public interest lawyers are people of color, but we are actually in situations, in rooms and conferences where most of our colleagues are white. Do you see that ever changing in the public interest world? And if so, what is it going to take? I mean, clearly finances are an issue, because I tell you, my first job at the Neighborhood Legal Services in DC, Southeast DC, after law school, I got paid less there as a lawyer than I did at my job in New York before I went to law school, right? As a word processor working a graveyard shift.
Yeah.
So how can we like encourage and change the system? And really, I think it's systemic change we need so that more people of color who want to do public interest law are able to do it.
Absolutely. And you really hit it on the nail, because finances has a whole lot to do with it. And many times our white brothers and sisters can afford to not rake in the big bucks. Okay. They might be, I forgot even what the word is called. Something babies, not pension. I don't even, because I'm not even in this world. Trust fund babies. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're right. Systemic change is needed. There needs to be a value placed on this type of law so that the funding goes into building up people who want to be a part of public interest law and movement lawyering and the like. The same as teachers in society, very undervalued. Okay. And there needs to be just a paradigm shift in just what is important and what is not important. Now, I will say there are opportunities out there today that weren't out there when I was coming up and around. There's so many fellowships out there now. There's a lot of stuff out there now that we need to make sure that our people, young lawyers, law students, are able to take advantage of, and do take advantage of, where the salaries are a little bit more commensurate. But I will say this is what I always have said. In my estimation, to me, I would love for all students, I would love for everybody to go into public interest law, but I also would love for them to do other things as well. I would love for them to be prosecutors. Why? Because I know they went through my course and they will be prosecutors with a conscience. Okay. I would love for them to be a judge. You know why? They might be one of those judges who be able to have a brain within their head to see the folk in prison need compassionate release. And when a motion comes before them to grant compassionate release as a result of this coronavirus, I would like for them to be a legislature. Okay. So that they could change some of these some of these laws. So I would like them to go to the big law firms so they can take on some cases pro bono. Yes. Okay. So my position is, no matter which vantage point, young people, Black people going into law, whichever vantage point that they choose, I want them to remember where they came from, and I want them to incorporate justice into it in whatever way that they can. If they got those big bucks, then use some of that money with the bail mama's bailout day. You know, right.
Pay for some depositions.
Say that again.
Pay for some depositions.
Yeah, I mean, this always evolve, no matter which vantage point we find ourselves. Let's take State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, for example. I mean, we're talking about I forgot what it's called, but it's a special unit that she started there that looks at convictions, that takes a second look at conviction integrity units. You know, some of these are popping up, but you need progressive, you need you know, state's attorneys, prosecutors with a conscience, okay, to be able to incorporate those that help to lead to systemic change.
And I remember it was in your class. I mean, it's popular now because of all the things we've been seeing with the murder by police situations on the news. But the first time I heard the phrase prosecutorial discretion was in your course.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to understand and respect the role of the prosecutor's office. So important.
Yeah, and that course, I look back through some of the materials from there. We were dealing with issues that were happening right then and there during the day. We were talking about racial profiling issue. We were talking about crack versus powder cocaine. We were talking about death penalty issues. We were talking about the Chicago police torture case. We were talking about you know, looking back at what happened with the Attica rebellion. I mean, there were a lot of contemporary things that we addressed in that you know, in that course, which yeah, and again, this was before Michelle Alexander and the new Jim Crow, you know, came out. Yeah.
Yeah. Questions, anybody? Again,
I
in
will
the
say
chat.
this, Demetria, I had promised some people, I don't remember who, in some of the emails I sent out. I know a lot of people have book clubs that they are associated with. If anyone is interested in a free discussion guide for book clubs, I have 10 cluster questions for book club discussion. Just let me know, put in the chat, or you could send me a personal chat thingamajigam with your email, and I'll email that to you. So.
Okay, all right, great. We're approaching our 1 hour time with each other. Again, I want to give anybody who has a question an opportunity. But let me ask you this, Nkechi, what would you like people to get out of having read your book?
Okay, that's a great question. Well, a couple of things. One thing is a little bit about what I just talked about, the knowledge that you can have shortcomings, you can have personal frailties. I talk about a lot of that of mine in the book. Okay. You can be unsure of yourself at times, but that doesn't stop you from having a profound impact on society. Uh, you can still kick ass in the courtroom. You can keep your hair in its natural state. You can be a richly melanated person with an African name and still make a difference. And I raise these things because these are some of the things you don't talk about a whole lot. Okay. We don't talk about impact of for example, could I have gone much further if my name had stayed Anita Josephine Caldwell? I don't know. But I do know I've made a profound impact as Nkechi Taifa. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Could I have gone further if I had perm in my hair? Probably. But I also know that having my hair as this, I still have made a profound impact. I'm just saying, I want people to know you can be your authentic self. Okay? I learned that from my mentor, Newly Street, who's on it. You can be your authentic self and still make a difference. It might take a little longer. It might be a bit harder. And you might not always be successful. Okay? But the importance, Ifabola, or there, my doctor, physician friend who has inspired me so much, the important thing about it is you got to be you. Okay? You can't be anyone else. You got to be you. So that's one central thing I really want young folk out there to know. And then the final thing, I guess, is don't think that what you're doing or going through today has never been done before. Go back and connect the dots between the movements of yesterday and the movement that are happening and occurring today. You might find some similarities, but more importantly, you might be able to benefit from looking at those movements, looking at the trials and the tribulations relishing in the successes and the victories, okay, but knowing that it is important to go on and continue the struggle and just connecting those dots all the way around.
That's awesome.
You know.
That is really awesome. And I mean, with today being, self-determination, Kujichagulia, I think that really speaks to that on a very, not only an individual basis or level, but I think your life journey speaks to helping Black people, melanated people, achieve or better achieve what can we call self-determination. So going into 2021, as it relates to self-determination, do you have any goals or objectives as it relates to self-determination for 2021?
Well, my self-determination for 2021, I'm learning from the young folk and the movements that are happening right now today on the street. My thing that I want to do is do some self-care. That's one thing these young people are talking about all the time. Self-care. I call up somebody and they say, oh, I'm off in the mountains and whatever. They take time to take care of themselves. My generation didn't do that. That's why we call stuff the struggle. The struggle. Because we were always struggling up to midnight. Self-care. I want to incorporate meditation more. I want to incorporate yoga more. I want to incorporate, taking walks and, just serenity and, all like that. Things that really had not been part of my life. I want to, incorporate things like that more. Yeah.
I'm gonna take a page out of your book. Yes, yes. All right, folks, we are at our time here. Thank you so much. This has been recorded, so I am sure without a doubt that you have picked up some nuggets from our esteemed author, attorney, activist, mother. Yes, she is someone's mother. Like she mentioned earlier, she was 9 months pregnant, walking the halls of Congress. She's every woman. And sometimes that superwoman thing is why we need the self-care, honestly. But everybody, please share after this recording is posted, share the recording, get the book. We'll put the link for the book in the chat one more time, but check out the book. This is one of my legal mentors, you guys. I mean, what an inspiration. She really, just knowing that she was in the building. I only took her class one semester, but knowing she was in the building, helping me find those public interest internships. Much love to you, much love to you, much love to you. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. Be safe out there, love each other, and just let's practice the principles of Kwanzaa.
Thank you so very much, Demetria. Kujichagulia, happy Kwanzaa. Thank you everyone for joining. Peace and blessings. The struggle continues.
The struggle continues. Have a good night.
Okay, peace. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.